I'm going to break this up today into 5 different parts and I'll walk you through it. And this is meant to be kind of like a whirlwind tour of mobile journalism to help give you an idea of what is possible. I am more than happy to geek out with whoever wants to and talk more of the nitty gritty. But today it is going to be a little bit of like the flavors of all the kind of stuff to think about so that you know what you can do if you just kind of start digging into it a little bit more. So welcome to this session of PressPad REMOTE from everybody who's joining us. Today, I'm going to walk you through how to become a mobile journalism wizard. The acronym that we normally use in the industry is MOJO, for Mojo, like mobile journalism. So if you see that anywhere, that's what that means. Like I said before, I'm really easy to find on Twitter if anybody wants to chat afterwards. Send cat pictures. So the purpose of today's class is to kind of make you realize that these little things that we have in our hands are incredibly powerful to help us throughout the entire production cycle of journalism, from reporting, editing, publishing, and also finding new ways of storytelling that help us reach new audiences and in new formats. And for those of you guys who are watching that are going to be going into the industry very soon, the thing that you guys have got going for you is that you're young. And people are going to assume that you're digitally savvy. That doesn't make any sense. Digitally savvy. So you kind of have to be, right? This is your thing. Own it. When you go and apply for a job and you're competing against someone like me, who has been in the industry for about 10 years, I have more experience than you, but you know this kind of stuff, or it comes more natively to you than it does to me. So 100% own that this is the future of where not just journalism, but your career can take you. And this is regardless of what kind of journalism you want to do. I'm going to show you tools for reporting, straight up print reporting, audio, podcasting, video, broadcasting, AR, VR, interactive storytelling, all sorts of stuff, right? So what are we going to do? We're going to divide this into 5 parts. One, I'm going to show you a little bit of the history of how we've told stories with phones. And it starts a little bit further back than you'd think. We're talking about storytelling and why it's important to think about how we tell stories on phones. Then I'm going to do a little bit of a hardware demo. I've got like my phone and some microphones and some lights and some tripods to show you. I'll show you some apps, like I mentioned at the beginning. All the apps that I'm going to show you are free to download. Some of them will have paid for features, but I'm a big believer in using free accessible tools that don't cost money in creative ways so that we're not pricing people out. And last, I'll just leave you with some resources. After each little section, I'll stop real quick to see if anyone's got questions. But I am going to do this as a little bit of a whirlwind tour. So strap on, kids. Let's do it. So a brief history of mobile journalism. Where are we coming from, right? So the first film, big film, proper bit of storytelling, and I'm going to speak of storytelling in the wider sense to include both fact and fiction, or like kind of educational television or factual entertainment, because I think it speaks to how the technology has evolved. So the first kind of big feature film that we have that was made entirely on phones is from 2008, and it's called SMS Sugarman, SMS meaning like text. It was shot before iPhones even existed. I don't even want to ask when some of you guys were born and whether you even remember a world without iPhones. So let's just not go there. It was shot on Sony Ericsson's W900i. I don't know if anyone had one of these, but you would like flip it up and it had a keyboard underneath. It was like the coolest thing. I always wanted one and never got one. It was made in South Africa by a filmmaker, and it's a completely feature film, like feature length film. I'm going to play you a little bit of it, just a bit of a warning. There's some language and it's like an R-rated movie, but hopefully we're all adults on this Zoom call. But just so you get a sense of what people were already doing in 2008. Oh, hold on a second. That did not work. Right, so here it is, SMS Sugarman.
Who are you, Sugarman?
I'm a hooker.
You owe us 50,000.
I need you to do a hit for me.
Where's the money?
You don't even know my real name.
Have you done the hit?
Show me your teeth.
No, I'm at the office.
Lewis. Get off your fucking phone!
Call me later. What is your name?
Sugarman.
So you can see even the format is square, right? You're not even shooting proper 16:9, but it was the best quality that you could get from those phones and using kind of like traditional cinema storytelling styles. The next big kind of marker when it comes to phone storytelling came in 2015. This film called Tangerine debuted at the Sundance Film Festival. It was shot on iPhones 5S. I reckon a couple of you guys will have had a 5S because I definitely had one at one point, with a couple of lens apps. And I'll play you a little bit of the trailer as well. Try and see if you can tell the difference. Not all of it was shot on iPhones 5S, but most of it was shot on iPhones 5S.
Hey, Alexandra, come here. Listen, have you seen Cindy?
Cinderella. Looks like someone has a crush.
Cindy's back on the block?
Oh, yeah, she's back. She's back and she's going hard.
Merry Christmas, bitch. Woo! I got some good news to tell you about me and Chester.
I know what it is. You're breaking up with him. Thank God. Him to be cheating on you like that.
Wait, what?
You didn't know?
White boy. Who is she?
Her name starts with a D.
Danny.
And this is how they shot it. iPhones, for the most part, on a gimbal, using direction, making sure to get really clear audio. There was obviously a post-editing process that went into it. But for the most part, what iPhones and phones started to do was democratize the ability to film really high quality stuff if you just thought about it a little bit more, right? And the same thing has been happening to journalism. So one of my former students, who always gets embarrassed when I talk about her, but she's amazing. Her name's Boglarka Kostolani. She works for CNN now. Go and follow her on Twitter. She worked for Euronews for a little while, and she was a field producer. And they would send her out with 2 iPhone X's and a couple of gimbals and tripods to shoot live television segments. That was exactly what they were doing, and it was broadcast quality. And they did entire morning shows, and it was in completely shot on phones, and that made them more mobile. It means you have less kit to put through an airport. Back when we could travel, right? That you have to check through airports. It also means that you're more nimble. So a couple of things, if they happen in front of you, it's easier to react and to do this or to pull out stuff from a backpack than to have to set up a humongous camera. And obviously, like, there's still huge advantages to shooting on cameras the old traditional way. I'm not denying that. I'm just saying, at least for us, for journalists, it can be a really democratizing and powerful force. And just to kind of further drive that point home, Jimmy Fallon even did an entire episode shot on Samsung Galaxy 10Xs last year. It was obviously like a promo. They were pushing the phones, but the entirety of the show was shot and filmed and broadcasted live strictly from phones. And we can share these links afterwards to all of the little films that I'm showing if anybody wants to go back and revisit them and look at them with a fine-tooth comb. So before I move forward, does anybody have any kind of burning questions they want to ask? Leave the ones about like tech and hardware and apps and stuff, because that's all coming. I'm just going to have a really quick look at the chat if anyone's got any like super burning questions. Love that people are reminiscing about the phones that they had. Right, I'm going to crack on. So when we talk about cross-platform storytelling, right, and shooting with phones, I think the most important thing to remember, and I used to tell this to my students all the time when I was teaching at the University of Kent, is that, or at least I hope that I used to say this all the time, because a bunch of them are watching now and they're going to tell me if I didn't. No amount of tech can save you from bad storytelling. The core of telling stories, of how you shoot, of how you compose, of how you edit, of how you build narrative, of how you tell the stories of people is exactly the same. And old school, traditional journalistic core values are still what underpins the best storytelling, even if it's shot with the shiniest new tech. And we can't let tech distract us from that reality, right? So when we're thinking about shooting with phones, I think we also have to start to think about how we interact with video online and how the stuff that you guys produce and that I produce is competing with the cat gifs of the internet and YouTube and Netflix for people's attention. And no matter how many hours it takes you to shoot and edit something, people don't care what's on the cutting room floor. That's a phrase back when people actually cut film with scissors. That was even before my time. But it just goes to show that no one cares that it took you 40 hours to do something. All we care when we see content online is the quality of it, and whether it's engaging and whether it's funny or informative or polished. And we need to keep that in mind. right? And to remember our own consuming habits. This isn't them, this is us. I do it all the time. If something's not like got my attention in the first 3 seconds of TikTok, I scroll forward, right? And it's about doing short, punchy, but informative video storytelling, particularly for journalism. And I'm thinking journalism in the wider sense, so television, broadcast, documentary, thinking about video that works across platforms, not just phones, but TV screens, but iPads, but any screens, right? We're creating images for screens. Whether we're using sound or no sound, do people read subtitles more than they listen to actual sound on video? Do we need to do a little bit of both? Do we need to think about framing for different crops so this can live across different platforms, right? And how do we shoot and how do we compose things so that no matter where you end up uploading it or how you have to crop it, that the video still works, right? And this is obviously a challenge if we're thinking about kind of the more traditional way of composing things where I'm a big fan, for example, of the rule of thirds, and you put something in the complete left field of your picture to make it better composed. But then if I upload that to Instagram, it's going to crop half of that thing out, right? And how do we reinvent composition and storytelling so that regardless, this is a screenshot from Interstellar, an amazing film. If we were shooting it, imagining how would we want it to live across platforms? How do you make sure the action gets cropped in the right way? And this is something that is going to be a lot easier for you guys who are starting out, because you don't have these habits. I am 100% the person that does this with their phone all the time. And that is not how people interact with phones anymore, right? It's going to take me a little bit longer to kind of let go of my need to shoot horizontal and learn how to do vertical. You guys can do that from the start and learn to live with those different formats. And like I said before, it's all about old school storytelling. No amount of tech in the world can save crap storytelling, and keeping that in mind and reminding yourself that, and not letting yourself get distracted by the shiny tech. Use the shiny tech, learn how to master it, let it become second nature, and then go back to basics to how you use it to tell stories, right? And I was gonna make a point about TikTok because it's my thing that I talk about all the time. And to get you to think about how even a 10-second TikTok is telling stories through frames, the same way that we would have storyboarded out a little video for TV screens, right? So this is one of my latest favorite ones. I'm just gonna play it. Come on, you can do it, computer. Oh man, it's gonna betray me because it's a video of dogs when I have a cat. This is probably what's happening and why it's not playing. Gonna try one more time, and if not, we'll move on.
What should we fucking da? I don't fucking know.
Even that, right? That is 5 different shots put together, shot to have a conversation, using labels to drive the narrative forward. That is storytelling, you guys. And you can use that. This is an example of the Washington Post. They have an amazing guy called Dave, who's their TikTok guy. They hired him about a year ago and gave him a phone and went, Dave, figure TikTok out because we don't get it. And he's done it. So look at how he's using the same principles in that stupid dog video to tell actually a really important story.
What is the definition of white fragility? White fragility is the discomfort and defensiveness on the part of a white person when confronted by information about racial inequality and injustice.
Hey Dave, you've benefited from white male privilege your entire life.
Now I'm sad, and I'm going to yell really loudly about how I'm not racist and not reflect on the actual world we live in and how I contribute to white supremacy because my feelings are hurt. And I have black friends.
And that has parts of a story, right? It was storyboarded out. They thought about how he was going to step to let you have some text. There is the voice of a woman that comes in to drive that narrative forward. And it's 15 seconds, but it's the same core storytelling that we've been using since forever, just learning new styles and new platforms and new trends of how we communicate with one another, right? Using tags, using sounds, using effects, using transitions. So I'm gonna leave you, before we move on to actually some tech stuff and show you some hardware, with my 6 golden rules for visual storytelling. And this is regardless whether you're shooting on phones or with a cameraman or with a camera yourself or with a DSLR, it doesn't really matter. And it's underpinned by 2 things. Practice makes perfect. So you never want to be in a situation where you're trying out a new app while you're in a breaking news scenario, because you're not going to be able to do both of those things right. Master it, practice it in your own time, use your family, use your pets as subjects, go out to the park or yeah, we can go out to the park now, right? And make sure you know it before you're actually in an event where you have to cover this, right? And the second one is, like with everything, watching and analyzing other people's work to try and reverse engineer how they got it and then trying to imitate it is the best way to get better at this, right? Monkey see, monkey do, and then monkey innovates on their own. That's kind of the idea behind how this works. And any kind of journalism, right? That you only get better by doing some more of it. So here are my 6 golden rules for visual storytelling. Even on phones, even with the flashiest new apps, even with the newest things, script and plan and script and plan ahead. Think of structure, right? Think about how you're going to drive that story forward. Number 2, even though we're talking about a visual medium, audio is king. Our tolerance for shitty audio is really low. Really, really, really low. Unless you've got amazing footage of a like breaking scene situation, we have very low tolerance for bad audio. So make sure that you are news gathering with microphones or in quiet spaces, or to make sure that that audio edit is there. Number 3, composition still matters, even though it's vertical. Even more so if you have to think about how does it work in vertical and square and 16:9. Number 4, choose your background and your foreground. That means what's behind your subject and what's in front of your subject on purpose. And this might mean if I'm standing in a park and there's a tree and it looks like it's coming out of my head like some sort of hairdress, maybe just ask me to step to a side, right? And then I don't have that. And using those as part of the storytelling is super important. Number 5, hold every shot for at least 10 seconds, because that then gives you a chance to edit, right? And to cut one thing into the other. If you just go 1, 2, 3, you never know what could have happened in that frame that you didn't notice. If there's a weird sound, if something glitched, 3 seconds, even if your end shot is 3 seconds, you need those 10 to give you wiggle room for the edit, and at least 10 seconds, right? And then number 6, shoot all the B-roll or the ULAs or the OOVs or the, there's loads of ways to call these, basically all the illustration shots, the setup shots, the close-up shots, the shots about things that are related to the story that you're doing, right? And if you think of all of these 6 together, regardless of what you're shooting on and what you're shooting for, you will have lots to work with, and underpin it with journalism and with practice. Always, 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 right? And it was important to, I always do I try to think about this part first and then go to the tech, because otherwise my brain only remembers the tech. And I kind of want to make a point. These things matter. The core of journalism storytelling, or storytelling in general, if you end up doing like fiction stuff, is the most important part. And no amount of tech can save you if it's not underpinned with that. So before I start to show you some stuff and play with some hardware, does anybody have any super pressing questions? No. Right, let's play with some toys, shall we? So I'm going to show you some lights and some tripods and a bunch of other stuff, but the 3 most important pieces of kit that you can ever have as a mobile journalist is a phone charger with a really long lead. So I buy these really long leads that are also threaded so that the cable is a little bit more protected. And these aren't expensive. You just have to look out for them. They're not like the first thing that, look at how long that thing is. And it means that I can potentially be charging my phone and doing an interview, right? Without having to be like, ugh. So look, super long. I mean, I also buy these threaded because otherwise my cat chews through them and kills them all. But yeah, so your phone charger with a long lead, a battery pack. One of those pre-charged things that people take to music festivals, you need 1 of them or 2, because your battery will be depleted a lot quicker when you're constantly shooting, right? So make sure you have 1 of those ready. Because you also can never assume, if you're a journalist, particularly working in breaking news environments, that you're going to have access to a charging point or to be able to stay in one place at a time, right? And like I said, the third one, a long ass charger cable to give you that kind of freedom if you need to be stable in one place so that you don't have to be stuck to a wall. And you can buy these, I think mine is 2 meters long, but you can buy some that are like 5 meters long. Depends how fancy you want to get with it. All the kit that I'm going to show you, I normally carry around in this little backpack. This little backpack lives in my car, or used to go around with me when I was doing journalism. And it means that I'm ready to go whenever it all happens. The other thing is, it's a diagonal backpack. And I once went to a safety for journalists workshop, and I'm one of those Dora the Explorer people who wears like 2 strap backpacks. And she told me that if I'm ever in like a protest or riot situation, it's very easy for someone to grab the back of your backpack and take you to the ground, especially for women. So she suggested that we do diagonal backpacks, because then you can bring your kit to the front with you, and it's a lot safer, and it gives people less like ways that they can pull you around if you're ever in a crowd. It also means that you can reach and grab your stuff in the front. Anyway, so mine is a diagonal little backpack situation. And right, hold on a second. Let me stop sharing my screen to show you some stuff properly. So I've got my phone. If you're ever going to change phones, if you're one of those contracts where they renew your phone every 2 or 3 years, always keep your old one so you have a backup. This is my previous phone, and this is my work phone, and that means I always have 2 that I can play around with. Or if like your older sibling is going to get rid of their old shitty phone, keep it. You never know when a backup phone is going to be an amazing kind of like resource for you to have. When it comes to the kit that you're going to need to shoot on phones, there's 3 basic things. A bracket. This is a little brace they're extendable. Can you guys see that? So it stretches out for different sizes of phones, and it has the same kind of little thing that you can use to put on any tripod. Enter tripod, right? So these go onto the same tripod plates, any tripod plates of any tripod that you already have or that your school already has. And it has 2, one in the back and one underneath. And that means that you can do it like this to shoot in different angles, whether you want to do vertical or whether you want to do horizontal shooting, right? You can also get teeny tiny little baby tripods like these ones, which are really useful because then you whack the brace on the tripod. You put your phone on the brace, put that on a table, put that on a bench, put that on top of a car, and you have an immediate way of having a stable shot, right? They also sell some of these with like little, what am I going to call them? Like little bendy legs. They're called gorilla pods. And that means that then you can wrap the legs around, for example, like a signpost or the edge of a car, or like your hand, or the brace, for example, of a bicycle if you wanted to do some tracking shots. Those gorilla pods are really cool. The other things that you can also, hold on a second. And by the way, as a disclaimer, all of this stuff that I'm going to show you, I've bought myself, with the exception of one of the microphones I'm going to show you. They're all kind of under 20 quid a pop. So you can very easily make yourself a little kit. You can also buy these really cool little pod things. They're like bean bags, and they're a bit weighted. And they have, look at this. This is the same thing like you have in the plate for a tripod. So again, oh, hold on a second. This is one I can't do it because I'm doing it in front of people. So you can screw that in and it becomes a little weight. And then I can put my phone on a car, inside a fridge to get a shot of someone opening a fridge door, on the floor to get a different kind of shot, in a bookshelf, anywhere, right? One thing that I also learned the hard way is, so hold on a second, let me turn my phone off. So you've got your video screen there, right? What I used to do is I used to shoot, especially when you're doing interviews. Let me actually change to the tripod because that's easier to show. So I used to shoot it, obviously with the phone behind me, over my shoulder into the person that I'm interviewing, right? But the way I do it, where did I leave the brace? Oh, this is all gone wrong, you guys. Oh, here we go. I used to do it with the screen where I can see the shot facing to the back of my head, so I could turn around really quickly and see if my shot was still working. But what happened is that the interviewees end up being able to see themselves. So I'd end up interviewing people who were like, yeah, I mean, let me tell you about like this latest thing that I've just kind of like developed. And it was just such a really stupid thing to learn on the field. And then I realized that all you have to do is turn around your phone and then say like, hold on a second, I just need to check that the shot's fine, walk around it and walk behind. So what I mean is this, I used to shoot, if I was interviewing you guys, I used to shoot like this so that I could just do this and check my shot. But if you were stood in front of me, you'd be able to see yourself, right? And that becomes wildly distracting. So what I've learned to do now is just make sure that your brace is turned around oh, hold on a second. Like that, so that they can't see themselves. And then you just kind of go, have a look, check that your frame is right, and come back. Yeah. And like I said, you don't need a humongous tripod. You can use one of the little baby ones. When it comes to sound, there are a couple of really key things to have. Number one is a lavalier mic. And again, you can buy super expensive kinds. You can buy, there's even like lapel wireless mics that are not that expensive. If anyone's watching who has a university budget and wants to buy their students' nice things, they're about 50 quid a pop. So the receiver is like a little box that goes on the phone, and then the kind of broadcaster is a little box that goes here, and it's like a wireless microphone. For those of us who don't have that much budget at our disposal, these cabled mics are really, really, really good. The cables tend to be a little bit short. So if you want some freedom so you can get people separated away from your phone to give you that freedom to move, you can also buy long ass microphone extenders. I have a humongous one because sometimes I used to do a bunch of this like foreign corresponding on my phone for outlets in Mexico where I'm from. And I used to I like doing walking pieces to camera. I'm one of those people who goes like, let me explain to you the finance of Brexit while I walk. So I needed a bunch of lead time, right? So these extenders are great. You just put them in between your microphone and your phone, and it gives you that freedom to move. An important thing to notice that is a little bit different to phone jacks to normal the AC jacks. These have 3 lines. Can you see that on the little pin? And those 3 lines, it means that it both receives and it sends audio. So if you ever wanted to get, I don't own one, but they sell some little adapters that you can put in here so that it splits it into 2, so someone can be listening in on your audio. Like if you were doing it to hook up to a camera, so you can do that, right? I'm a self shooter, so that's a little bit pointless because I'm shooting at the same time. But if you're ever going out in pairs, you can buy those splitters, and you need to make sure that the pin has those 3 lines so that it both sends and receives audio at the same time, right? Some of the fancier kit that I've got myself a little handheld microphone because again, when I was doing a bunch of this stuff, I was doing a bunch of vox pops, and it was a complete faff putting lapel microphones on different random strangers all the time. And like people are sweaty and you have to put it under their shirt, and it's just this whole thing. These microphones I think they're probably like 30 pounds when I bought it. And it has the same pin. And look, this one actually has the splitter. So I can hook in some headphones there to check the audio. And then it was just easier to kind of go like, hi, I'm Laura, I'm gonna ask you a question, and ask them a question, right? I've even done I used to do some corresponding for a Spanish language television station in Los Angeles called Estrella TV. And they even sent me one of the cubes that they use for their fancy proper reporter microphones. And I just I stick it out under there, and I kind of have to hold it with my hand so the cube doesn't slide down, and pretend that I was one of their proper reporters to talk about. I used to cover Brexit for them and like the royal wedding and stuff like that. But basically my point is you can reproduce a bunch of the things that you do for broadcast with very simple kit. Lights are important. LED lights don't heat up, and they run on batteries, and they are rechargeable. This particular one is super tiny, which I really like, and it comes also with the same, can you see that? That's the same plate that can go on a tripod, or your friend can hold it, or you can hold it yourself. So I've shot some interviews when I'm the shooter, and I'm also doing this to light someone from above. And they're not expensive. They don't heat up, which is important because it means that you can pack them up straight away. And sometimes you can also buy, they sell some braces, which you put on a tripod, kind of like what we saw the people who were shooting Tangerine. So it's like a brace on the side that has a space here where you can hook the light up to it. And if we're thinking about the environment, obviously buy rechargeable batteries so you don't have to be throwing them out all of the time. Now, if you want to get super fancy, or if this kind of becomes what you do, and I do a bunch of videos for my work at First Draft, I've invested in, I also just bought it because I wanted one and I wanted to play with one. I bought myself a ring light, like TikTok people use. These are a little bit more expensive, but they're not like wildly expensive, but they're a really good way of lighting people. And again, because they're LED lights, they don't heat up. These also come with color control. So let me see if I can do this properly. The color temperature, you can control it. I don't know if you guys can see, because I think the computer immediate balances it, but this is mixing cool light with warm light to give me kind of normal health, natural skin tones. But I can, right, so that's just cool light. And then I can make it warm light. Did you guys see that change? I don't think you can really see it that much through Zoom, but it's a really cool way of, especially if your job is being on camera. If you're like me and you wear glasses, you have to deal with this kind of situation because it reflects in your glasses. But you can do it without. You can light someone really nice. You can do some really nice backlighting. You can get fancy with it by putting it behind someone, for example, so against a white background. And if you blow the light towards the background, what it gives you is like a nice halo for that kind of documentary feel thing. So very quickly you can start to get creative with stuff that is not intended to be used that way, right? Most of the people who buy ring lights use it to do makeup tutorials on TikTok. And by all means, do makeup tutorials on TikTok if that's what you're into, right? But you can also use it for proper journalism. And the fact that more and more people are buying this stuff, it means that the kit is just getting less and less expensive. I think that's all I have to say about kit before I go on to show you just some stuff on my phone and show you some apps. Ayo, you've been keeping your eye out for the chat. Are there any kind of like super pressing questions about kit? Ask away. I think you're on mute, Ayo, because I can't hear you, hon.
Sorry, I was just finding the question. April asked, if you're ever in a scenario where you do not have a tripod handy, what can you use to stabilize shots?
A wall, a bookshelf, your friend, a shoulder. I've done that before, 100%, and asked someone to like be my tripod. Phones also have really good inbuilt stabilizers. So if your shot is a little bit shaky, for the most part, your phone will fix it. But I would say never make it a default thing to shoot like this. That is a terrible idea, especially because you need to be focusing on the journalism. You need to be focusing on the person, the questions that you're asking, the answers that they're giving you back, what's happening in front of your television, in front of your phone screen. And if you're paying attention, most of us tend to do this, or like, and then your shot's going to be shitty. It's not going to work. So you have to take the same care and attention that you would if you would think about it this way. What would you do if you were shooting with a humongous TV camera? Do exactly the same, even if the kit is different. You wouldn't just handhold a humongous TV camera. You'd put it on a tripod, or you'd find a surface, like an even surface for it. Do exactly the same thing. Another question, Ayo, while I wrap up some cables, because I've made a bright mess.
I think that's all that we have from that. Oh, wait. Kaylin asked, with a mini tripod, what do you do if you are outside in a place without a table to rest it on?
It depends what you're trying to shoot. So if you're trying to shoot unfolding stuff, holding a stick is already a little bit more stable than doing this with your hands. And God forbid, like I hate selfie sticks, but selfie sticks at a push will help you keep things more stable, right? They genuinely will do. If you're interviewing someone and you're outside, just ask them to step to some side with you. A lot of it is producing just like you would old school television, and scouting around and looking where there's a bench or where there's a place where you can sit someone down on the floor, or where you can get someone close to a little garden wall, and then like make sure you fix the shot, or putting it on a tree. Like there's loads of things that you can do even if you have a teeny tiny thingy. Or again, if you have one of those gorilla pod things, put it on someone's shoulder. I have done that before. If you're ever using a person as a tripod, obviously, number one, get their consent and ask them nicely. But number two, make sure that they're standing with their legs far apart. It's exactly like a tripod. If you set up a tripod like this, it's unstable. If you open up the legs, it's more stable. Most of us, if we're standing with our legs close together, we tend to do this and we swivel around. If you're ever doing, and do it for your Zoom calls as well, or if you're ever doing like interview stuff. Do you remember the Conservative Party, probably like 2 or 3 years ago, when everyone was doing like the power stance? Channel that energy. That's what you want, because a wider open stance is going to keep you more stable, right? And always, I mean, if you're using humans as tripods, always try and keep it as short as you can, right? That's not going to be a 4-hour solution. It's going to be a 2-minute vox pop solution. Any more questions?
Katie asks, what do you do if you are trying to shoot in the rain?
Oh, you know what? Here's one of those things where shooting with phones is easier than shooting with big cameras because it's smaller, right? So I did this once back home in Mexico ages ago, and I completely looked like a fool doing it, but it worked. I got myself, you know those there's like umbrella hats that you can buy, and they like attach here to your head, and they're open like that. I got one of those because I knew I was gonna have to go out and shoot, and it was gonna rain, and that means I just kept my phone here really close to my face, so it was protected by the umbrella. But again, you don't have to use this that's like a silly umbrella hat. A normal umbrella will work, right? And if you have your thing on a tripod, you can probably do this and fit under the umbrella, which you wouldn't be able to do if you had a humongous camera, right? Or again, you hold a selfie stick with one hand and the umbrella with the other. If you ever in a situation where you have to hold a selfie stick for a really long time, you will very quickly realize that it's a lot heavier than you think. What I would suggest is never get yourself in a situation where you're fully extending your arm like that, because you will get tired and you will do this, and that's what your shot's gonna do. Bring your elbow close to your body and use your body as a resting place, as a tripod. Anchor your elbow in your body, and that's gonna help. And then you can even use this hand and hold it here, because otherwise your hands are gonna start to go like by second 45 of holding your selfie stick, right? Yeah, I hope that answered your question.
I think it does. We have two from Facebook.
Go for it.
The first one asks, can you use Instagram TV to interview, or best to use Zoom?
It depends where it's going and what you're trying to do, right? So the thing about Instagram TV is it obviously records and you can download that after, but it will record half of your face and half of their face. So it depends where this is going. If what you're going is to interview someone in a super kind of popular democratic way where people can interact and ask questions, then maybe Instagram TV is where you want to do it. If you're doing it for a television piece, for an online piece where you need the quality to be a little bit better, Zoom is always the way. And remember that just like you have to produce your background, you have to produce your interviewee's background, just like you would in television, right? You never just sit someone down on their sofa. You think about where's the best way to do it. Are there any weird photos behind them? Do you have to move anything around? In a second, when I tether my phone to the computer, I'll show you the ridiculous setup that I do in my bedroom to get this white background behind me, because I know it's important to not have things behind me that distract you from the stuff that we're doing. The last thing I want is for you to be reading the books behind my bookshelf and kind of like not paying attention to the things coming out of my mouth. And you need to put that same attention to detail to the interviews that you're recording over Zoom. Just because it's over Zoom, just because it's on a phone, that doesn't mean it can be less professional. Professional means attention to detail and follow through on that detail. What's the other question, Ayo, from Facebook?
Someone asked, what brand is that microphone, or where can I buy so I can order? The microphone that you showed earlier.
The one that's like handheld. What is it?
I think so, yeah.
I think it's called an iRig. I have a basic Amazon wish list for like a basic Mojo kit, which I'll share at the end of this lecture. There's obviously equivalents for everything, and a lot of things are comparable, and it depends kind of what you're into. For anybody who's watching that's a university lecturer, does it pay to buy stuff that's a little bit more expensive so it lasts longer? Yes, it does. And sometimes that difference of like 10, 20 pounds makes a huge difference, just because the kit that you have is going to have a different use to other people's, right? Any more, Ayo? Shall we move on to do some magic screen sharing?
2 more from Zoom, and then I think we're done.
Go for it.
James asks, I've seen some journalists using gimbals. Are they worth looking into?
Yes, gimbals are amazing. They're just expensive. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend one off the bat. I'd say hone your skills with the cheap and cheerful stuff. Practice, practice, practice. Earn your way up to buying yourself a gimbal. Do you need a gimbal to make really good journalism? No, you don't. Does it help if you can afford it? Of course, because you can do some fancy stuff. Is it the only way to do fancy stuff? No, it isn't. They sell some, do you guys remember back that photo that I showed you of how they were shooting Tangerine? So they sell some counterbalance things that are kind of like a gimbal, but less sophisticated, that you can use to do some pretty like sweet movements and some tracking shots and stuff like that. But sometimes a little bit of ingenuity goes a long way. So you take a tripod, you put it on a skateboard, you practice your shot, and you have a tracking shot, right? Back in Mexico, when I was in film school, we realized that chickens have a really good center of gravity. So if you put anything on their heads and move their bodies, their head stays stable. I shit you not, this is true. So we strapped a GoPro to the head of a chicken and put this chicken on a boat to do a tracking shot, and the boat was moving everywhere, and the chicken's body was moving everywhere, but its head was in the same place. And we got this beautiful, slow tracking shot. So creativity will get you a lot farther. If you focus on the things you can't afford, you won't see the things that you can do with what's around you. And you can get lost in holes of spending money on kit. And I'll be the first one to say sometimes I do it, right? Like I bought a ring light before I needed it for my job because I just wanted one. But that, like, there's a balance in between.
The other question is just asking for links for the products you suggested, which you're supplying at the end, so we're good.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end. Right, let's try some magical screen sharing. So I'm gonna show you, and again, this is like the super whiz tour because we're running out of time. Oh, one last thing, don't forget immersive storytelling. These little cameras that you see on your screen, they're one of my favorite new things, and I don't own one, but one day when I grow up, I will. They're called Insta360 Nanos. They plug onto the under part of a phone, both Android and iPhone, and they let you broadcast in 360, broadcast live. So as a journalist, I don't have to describe to you what somewhere looks like. I can just take you there with me and then give you context or interview someone or let you look around, which is amazing. And these things are tiny. And the technology is getting better and better. But anyway, that's just my 2 cents about immersive storytelling. So apps. Your phone has 120 million times more power than the guidance system on Apollo 11. So let's learn to use it for more than just cat gifs and Twitter, right? As much as I love cat gifs and Twitter. I'm gonna show you a couple of types of apps to do different things. I just really want to quickly recap some of the ones that are available for video editing in particular. And there's some for Android and some for Apple. Some of these are, actually, let me start again. A lot of the ones that are on the screen right now are paid for. And you pay either like a monthly subscription or pay one-off to download them. These are, if this becomes your work, if this becomes your life, if mobile journalism is a thing that you're seriously using in your professional development, I strongly recommend thinking about them. We're not talking Adobe Creative Suite levels of money. It's a lot smaller. But this is just, especially if broadcast is going to be your thing and if it's actually becoming a part of your everyday working life, or if you're trying to equip your students with really good kit, right? But the rest of the ones that I'm going to show you are all free and have paid for features. And I'm going to show you apps real quick to take notes, to make infographics, to make animations, to edit photographs, to record audio, to edit audio, to send material, to do broadcast audio or podcast, to record video, to edit it, to live broadcast, to use as a prompt, and to verify information, all in a whistle-stop tour. And if ever you wanted to screenshot what you're seeing, the moment is now. These are the apps that I'm going to show you. So there's 3 core ones for reporting. TinEye, that lets you reverse image search photos so that you can verify stuff that you're seeing on social. Notepad, which lets you password protect notes. So if you ever have notes from an interview or your sources, like personal details or information you need to protect. And voice memos, which is called voice memos on Apple, but it's called something different on Android, but that just lets you record sound on your phone. Then there's other kinds in my second part. And these is by no means an extensive list of the apps that are out there. These are the ones that I feel comfortable using after playing around with loads of them. I'm going to show you some shortcuts, stuff to work with images, apps to edit audio and video, stuff for live television, and some cool stuff for new formats like AR and VR. And some cool like little platforms that let you do some storytelling. So let me see if I can do this. We tried this before, Io and I, and it didn't go that badly. But if it does, I'm going to keep talking and filling some air time while I try to get technology to play with me. Hold on a second. Amazing. You guys can see my phone, right? So let me start by showing you guys the setup that I do to do these calls. Look at that. So that is my bed. There is a table on top of a box, on top of a thing, so that I get a clear view of my wall in my bedroom. My cat is down there, if anyone saw the interactive video of my cat. And I just pray to God she doesn't come out of her little box. And this is how I do, this is the production that it takes for me to do this kind of stuff. And you should be thinking, what is your equivalent, or how can you get the people that you're interviewing to do similar things so the quality of your video is better, right? Also look at the angle that I've set my camera at. It's not here, like when you're looking at your phone, it's kind of like at eye length, just like you would eye height, like you would if you were shooting with a normal camera. Right. So what do I start with first? Tonight. So Tonight is a website that lets you reverse image search any photo that you find online. Anything that you see on Twitter before you retweet, especially if it's news gathering, especially if it makes you feel super emotional or angry or happy or sad, save it to your camera roll, upload it to Tonight, and it is going to search the internet to see if it's been published before. Reverse image searching is one of the easiest and powerful ways that we can verify content online, and you can have it as a saved thing on your phone. Like I said before, Notepad is a really cool one because it lets you password protect notes or the entirety of your Notepad to keep your information more safe. And voice memos lets you just record a voice memo. This is how I have done voiceovers. So I connect my lapel microphone to my phone, and then I go and hide somewhere in a closet, or like I did the voiceover for a piece about Meghan and Harry ages ago, in the back behind a bin outside of a pub with my coat over my head, with my microphone really firmly planted in my lapel, and it worked brilliantly, right? And these are really good. Never ever just trust to do that, because that is going to get a bunch of ambient noise that you can't hear, but that microphones can hear, right? Microphones have special compressors in them to help you get clearer sound. So make sure you use a lapel microphone, and you go from there. If you're a radio person, voice memos are your best friends. And you can always go back, edit the name, keep them organized, because the last thing you want is 10 new recordings and you don't know which one's the good one. So just like you would offline, right? Keep your stuff organized. Now, when it comes to images, so let's start with what's easy. I've talked about Canva before as a way to make your CV look pretty and do fancy stuff, but it has a mobile phone version, which is really useful as well if you want to do quick graphics. Or if, for example, as a reporter, you want to publish a photo but have a caption that has a little bit more context to the story, or if you want to do these are the 5 top things we learned from today's House of Commons session and share it on Twitter, you can do that on your phone. You can also have presets that are ready to go, so you can use if you're ever working for a particular publication, so you have the right colors or the right logos, and it also links to your Canva account. It's the same login that you would use on a computer, so you can go set it up all on your computer and then just access it through your phone. Spark Post is the same thing, but the Adobe version. This part of it is free, and you can do, I mean, unless you pay for it, it has those annoying ads, but it's just an ad that you can move and make go away, and it lets you edit a bunch of templates, start straight from scratch, do little animations and GIFs. And again, sometimes this is the kind of stuff that makes your story just stand out a little bit more and grabs people's attention. If 15-year-olds can do beautifully crafted YouTube videos from their bedroom, we as storytellers need to up our game, and there's no reason why we shouldn't, even if we're out and about on our phones. Layout is a really cool one that is really simple. It lets you do, I don't really have photos on this phone, but I can pick, for example, 3 photos and then make a collage out of it. Change the size. So I want to make this one tiny and then this one a little bit bigger. Actually, I want to swap them around, and then you can publish it to the internet. So again, if you're out covering breaking news and you want to do an instant collage of the 2 main characters in this sports match and an illustrated photo, you can do it straight from here, save it to your camera roll, and then go and publish it, right? So that's for pictures. For sound, GarageBand, this is the phone version of the same that you get on Apple Mac computers that lets you edit sound. It's almost like a phone version of, if anyone's cut with Audition or Audacity, very similar. Anchor is a really cool free app that lets you both record, edit, and publish your podcast for free. It's made by Spotify, so it lets you publish to Spotify, to Acast, to a bunch of other stuff. And you can discover what other kinds of podcasts people are making. You can come and make one yourself. It lets you record, it lets you upload stuff, it lets you invite your friends. If you ever wanted to have a podcast that's a chat podcast, for example, I could ask Ayo to make an account on Anchor, and then I invite his account in, just like you would invite someone to do a live Instagram TV with you. And then we have a live chat podcast that we can publish. It lets you edit some bits before you publish as well, if you wanted to trim the beginning and the end. Mixler is one of my favorite ones. So what Mixler lets you do is to live stream audio. It's like having your own radio station. So for example, if this is my profile and if I wanted to start recording, hold on a second. This is where I forget how to do it. So I tried yesterday and I recorded something where I saved it. I don't know if, let's hope you guys can hear it. One sec. My internet's being a bit intense. But what Mixler lets you do is that you can tweet, for example, the link of where you're broadcasting live, and people can tune in and listen. So I've used this, for example, to give live updates from a scene, to do live simultaneous translation, to do a thing, for example, where I'm covering a sports event and I keep talking about what's happening. And it's a live link that people can access regardless of whether they have the app or not. They can listen to on the internet. Oh, it's not letting me do it because obviously technology was going to stop me from showing you how to do it. But oh, here we go. So it says, press let's go to broadcast. And that's it. I'm already broadcasting. I just need to change the name. And again, never do it without a microphone, right? But then it's a live, it's live radio, free, democratizing broadcasting that you can do straight from your phone. When it comes to video, my favorite app to record stuff is called KineMaster. It has a paid for version that removes a watermark. If you don't pay for it, it has a little watermark at the top. But to be honest, it's a small price to pay if you're starting to teach yourself how to do it. And it's basically like having Final Cut Pro X in your hands and also a more, like a fancier camera. So for example, if I come to make a new project, it's asking me the aspect ratio. So again, thinking about how do we do this across screens, right? So let's say I'm gonna do something for Instagram. So it's 1-on-1. Then I don't know if you can see this thing that looks like a red eye. If I hit that, it opens up the camera functions. And this will give me a lot more control and I can record straight into my timeline. And this timeline, think of it like touchable video editing. So I can select it, make the clip shorter, make the clip longer, split it at the beginning, in the middle, add a filter. And like you can see, some of it has like a little crown. Those are the features I can't access unless I pay for KineMaster, but you don't really need them, particularly if you're just doing straight up broadcasting. See this little like plus sign that it's in between the clips? If I hit that, I can add a transition. So let's add a really corny one. So now look, I'm gonna play my little clip. It's that, it has a shitty airplane transition, and then it has a filter on it. I can add songs to this, I can add audio, and then the coolest part, again, if you're mobile journalists, see where it says record and has a microphone? Again, plug in a microphone, don't do it like I'm doing. But if I hit record and do start, I can do my voiceover to this video straight onto the timeline and time it to the video that is coming up. Play it back. I can do my voiceover to this video straight onto the timeline and time it to the video. So if your job is to do a 1-minute 30 piece for that evening's news and you're shooting with a phone on a tripod with a nice microphone, you can edit all on your phone, you can do your voiceover straight onto here, export, share. There's no reason why, I mean, I still really like editing on a computer, but there's no reason why you need a computer. And you can see that it has this like ugly made with KineMaster watermark. And if I try to remove it, it's asking me like, do I want to pay for it? But look at it, it's £4 a month or 20 quid a year, more or less, for a subscription to KineMaster. So again, if this, back when I was doing this for a job and this was my living, I did pay a subscription to KineMaster, right? Now I don't anymore, and I have Final Cut to edit, so I don't need to do that. You can also layer stuff up. So I can add a text, I can add an overlay, I can add different bits of, all the things that you can do on Final Cut or Premiere Pro, you can do on KineMaster. So there you go, that was my little promo for KineMaster. iMovie, particularly on iPhone, does the same things. You will have similar apps on Android. I am not an Android person, but you Android people will know what it is, but it works exactly the same way. iMovie is a little bit more limiting in what it lets you edit and it lets you do, but at a push, you can always use it. One of my newest finds is this one called Record It, which is really cool. It lets you record your phone screen plus your face, so you can create reaction videos to what you're watching or give context to something. So again, for example, I've been thinking of doing this for my job at First Draft, where Oh, hold on a second. Stop. Screen broadcast. No, recorded capture. Yeah. What is it doing? Where I can, for example, take a piece of problematic content found online and record myself explaining. So you'll see it like this. Look, whatever's on. Yeah, do it. You have my permission. Whatever's on my camera roll. So let's grab a video of my cat. It also records my face talking about it. So I can add context. As a reporter, especially if you're going into broadcast, your face, your personality, your persona is an important part of reporting. And you can do it with apps like these. And you can change where your little face is, and you can change how big your face comes up. But again, it lets you annotate or do reporting around visual content that you find on the internet. So Record It is one of my new favorite ones. I have a couple of good ones to do like animation-y stuff. So Pixaloop lets you do like fancy effects. Let's say it was a picture of me standing in front of some trees. I can make the trees look like they're moving. And it has some paid for features, but it like in general is just a little cool one that lets you do some fancier stuff. You can do, for example, think about it for portraits. If you had someone standing in like in the middle of a field because you're doing I don't know, a farmer and you're doing a Brexit story, and you can make the background, the grass in the background move. That's a much better and engaging portrait, right, than just a straight up photo. Giphy is awesome because it lets you shoot a GIF. And again, it's sometimes about how quickly you can get cooler material out. So for example, if I click create and give it camera access, that's my face. I'm going to add a filter to it, shoot a GIF, and then it exports it as a looped. Oh, I didn't hold down the button. 1 second. So that's me moving. That's a very attractive picture, isn't it? And then that's a GIF, and I can publish and share that. And again, think about GIFs are just looped video. Can you do that with a sports feature, showing someone dunking a slam, like a three-pointer, or doing something of their action that's related to the story? GIFs do not have to be silly. GIFs are just looped action that you can use to illustrate what you're talking about. I'll go real quick through the next ones because we're running out of time. Hours and minutes light. I use this one. It's a time calculator to do live TV broadcasts. So if I'm trying to back time, and if you don't know what back time is and you want to work in television, you better know you better learn what it is. The guy who used to run the Center for Journalism, a guy called Tim Lockhart, he's old school BBC journalist. He's got like this same calculator in his head and can just calculate minutes and seconds. I can't think in denominators of 60. So this calculator really helps my brain because I just go, right. So we have 4 minutes left in the show and this piece is 45 seconds. How long does that leave me? So 4 minutes minus 40, oh, God damn it, sorry. So 4 minutes minus 45 seconds. That means we have 3 minutes 15 left on the show, right? And again, this sometimes can be the difference. Parrot Teleprompter, it's my free teleprompter app. And it's my favorite one for many reasons. One, it's useful. Two, it has this adorable parrot icon. And what it helps you do is you write a script, any script, and then it lets you make a prompt out of your phone. And you can control the speed, you can control the size of the font, you can control the color, you can control a whole bunch of stuff. And it means that sometimes a phone there and then another one that films you, or if you're trying to do a live, you can use your phone as a prompt or you use it as practice. So Parrot prompt is a really good one. Skype, normal standard one to do interviews over the line. Live View, if anyone's into proper broadcasting, this requires a piece of hardware that you would get, but it's a little box that lets you broadcast live quality video, but the app that controls it just works on any phone, which is really, really, really cool. Real quick, the last ones that I want to show you. So this one on the bottom left-hand side is called Stellar. Stellar is a, hold on a second, I pulled up my one. It's an online platform that lets you create stories just for phones. It's vertical, it's interactive, it's very visual. So for example, I did this story about Cuba, because I went to Cuba a couple years ago. And each of these swipe like you would Insta stories. And it lets you make really pretty stories. This is a template, for example, with some picture and some text. And then I can tap into the next one, tap into the next bit of the story, tap into and take you through my whole, I did a little report about communism in Cuba and how it's changing. And it takes you through what is basically a little photo essay that you build on your phone for free and you publish. It gives you an embeddable code as well. So then you can go and embed this anywhere else, but you create solely on phones. So you have to, again, plan, storyboard your story out, and then you start to put it together on your phone. Storyo is another cool one that lets you join together photos, images, GIFs, or anything to make little like exportable stories. And then you can add little animations, and it lets you export like almost mini, think of it like mini photo collages with some titles or some music or stuff like that. And again, sometimes that's the difference between just pushing out a story with a photo on Twitter to something that's going to get more engagement because you're storytelling with it, right? So for example, I can select photos as a couple of them and then tell it to play, and it'll build me a little photo slideshow on its own, which then I can edit and tweak. I can change what the title looks like. I can change the colors. I can change the effects. I can change the pacing. I can change the timing, export it, and then share that straight away, right? So it's about thinking about these new ways of storytelling that aren't specifically tied to what we used to do before. Last two, I promise, and then I'll shut up. Mapstar is one of my favorite new ones. This is an AR free building app, if it works. What it lets you do is it lets you drop geotagged pins wherever you are in the world and annotate them. So let's say I'm a local reporter and I want to tell you the story of, I don't know. Oh, I know what I'm going to talk about. They're just putting up like a plaque to commemorate the first woman who edited a newspaper in London, which is awesome, right? So I can go out to where they're going to put this plaque, drop a couple of my little map stars, annotate them so that if you go to this place and turn on Mapstar, you can read more about it. Or I can tag it on a map and tell you, do you want to know more about the story? Go and walk to this place and point your phone at it and annotate it. So you can annotate with a little, can you see that? Can you guys see that? So Laura's pin in her bedroom. And this is using geolocation and my location services to pin it down. So if I do set, that is now a little star that if you guys had the same app, you can come in and walk around it, which is mega cool. And it's free. This is AR. So think about like Pokemon Go, but in a useful journalism way, how you can annotate spaces and use spaces to tell stories. Last but not least, Displayland. This one is VR. So it lets you capture virtual reality versions of objects or places and then lets people interact with them. So let me show you something that someone else has done. And this is really interesting, particularly if you're doing foreign corresponding or you're doing stories centered on subjects. So if I hit, for example, explore this particular one, come on phone, you can do it. Someone's scanned a house. These are pictures turned into VR that I can move around, have a look. I saw some students in the US use this particular app in a really interesting way because each of these kind of little VR scans are exportable and embeddable into blog posts. So what they did is they did a little series asking refugees who've moved to the US, what is the one thing that they brought with them from home? And they would scan the thing with this app, create a virtual reality version that was embedded in a long blog post telling their stories anchored across objects, the one object that they brought with them from home, right? And you can do it on your phone. It takes a little bit of time, but so you have to just like stare at something loads, take photos from a long time, from all sorts of places, and the app guides you through it. So it kind of tells you where to look, where to move, preferably with better lighting than where I am right now. But there you go, a super whirlwind, stop to work, off, stuff that you can do with your phone. Practice, 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 practice. Oh, the last one at the top. So for iPhone specifically, I don't know if Android have the same, but they must. There's this new app called Shortcuts that I don't know if you've seen and ignored on your phone. And what it has is a bunch of shortcuts that are really useful. I use 3. This one, which lets me shoot a GIF straight off from my phone. So if I do 4 photos, 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to think about it. And it's going to make a little looped GIF out of it. And again, you can use that to storytell. Look at that. Done. And it saves it to your camera roll. So again, sports stories, headlines, portraits, loads to do, right? The other one that I always have as a shortcut is this one that says silence during meeting. So right before I'm about to do an interview or anything, I click it and it stops all of my notifications, all of the noises, everything. so that they don't show up on your screen. This last one is really interesting because it's meant to help you find, the ones that meet halfway, it's meant to find a place for you and your friends to meet halfway to eat somewhere. I've used it loads when I'm trying to figure out what's the most central way to meet a source. They're in ass end of, don't know, North London. I live in South London, or I used to live in South London. Where's the central place where we can meet to do this interview? And I use that app for that. Anyway, I'm gonna stop talking and let you guys ask any questions. Ayo, go for it.
Okay. First up, we have a question about Android users. Are there like free app equivalents of these programs for Android?
Most of the ones that I show you have Android equivalents. The only one that I don't know what the equivalent is called is for iMovie and the Shortcuts one. But most of these are both Androids and iPhones. The only phones that I find sometimes are a little bit limited, weirdly, are the Huawei phones. They run on Android, but sometimes the permissions on the phone or how they work don't interact well with some of the apps, but not all of them. Parking the security issues of Huawei to one side, Huawei phones have the best camera lenses of all of them, if I'm honest. But then you kind of have to like balance all the other bits out, right?
Okay, next up, do all of the phone apps work for editing videos shot in both portrait and landscape?
Yes. Yes, all the ones that I showed you, yeah. And most of them will as well. You just have to test it out. A lot of the apps that are paid for will let you download a demo version. So never outright just pay for an app before you've played with it.
Patricia asks, what about security? If you're somewhere you're not really wanted, I'm not really sure about that question. If Patricia wants to,
yeah, if you wanna explain a little bit more about that, Patricia.
Yeah, yes, it was just you know, how do you secure your everything that you're shooting? How do you make sure that it's safe, essentially?
You download and back up like a crazy person.
Yeah.
Especially if you're shooting stuff that someone might come and say, hey, give me your phone and delete that footage. I tend to also have, again, back when this was my daily job, I had a memory pack that you can buy for phones that kind of like straps to the back and hooks up on in the underbit. And it means that it's an external memory pack. And I would always, like, as soon as I was finished shooting, I would back everything up to that external pack and then take it off and put it in a different pocket. So even if they came and say, oh, give me your phone, I was like, yeah, fine, have my phone. I have a backup in my pocket, right? You can also install Google Drive or Dropbox or anything on your phone and immediately back up to the cloud. So again, if someone wants to take your phone, not that it's fine, but it means that your footage is safe. But always, always, always back up. The moment you're done, back up somewhere. On your computer, on the cloud, on another phone, send it to someone, always back up.
Okay. And then April asks, do you happen to know of any apps which generate captions?
Not on phones, but there is an app called, it's an online browser-based, mostly free website called Headliner. If you type into the internet headliner.app, it has a very simple video editor and a bunch of other cool things that you can do with it. It adapts for different proportions. So like vertical, 16:9, 1:1 for Instagram. And it also has a really sophisticated transcription tool that lets you, it transcribes on its own, but then it lets you fiddle with the subtitles and you can change what they look like and you can change the wording and the timing so that the algorithm isn't perfect. Particularly if you're interviewing people like me who speak really quickly or have like weird accents, it won't get it right the first time, but it does a good enough job that the first transcription of the subtitles is maybe 60% of the way there, and then you just tinker with it. And I think the only limitation with Headliner is the number of videos that you can export a month without having to pay. I think it gives you like 10 or 15 videos for free every month, and then you have to start to pay a subscription model. But again, you can test it out, and if it becomes an important part of your work, then that's a different kind of conversation to have with yourself about the tools that you're giving yourself to do the job that you're doing. And Headliner also lets you do basic, like I want this bit of an interview plus this photo with a title and a transition and some music. So if Final Cut or any video editing software is not within your reach, not even the native ones that comes with computers, Headliner is a good, really basic place to start, but sometimes that can be just a lifesaver.
And finally, from Facebook, could Stella be used for the case studies as like an Instagram version of experiences?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, the cool thing about Stellar is that it's really slick. It looks pretty. The templates are really pretty with that kind of like, not to stereotype, but that kind of like Scandi, clean, minimalist look, which is gorgeous. If anyone's into travel journalism, it's perfect to do travel pieces because it like has space for photos and for videos, and it's like really interactive, and the fonts are really clear and pretty. So it's that kind of like magazine-y look for stuff that you can do really quick. Can you do the same on Instant Stories? Yeah, you can probably do something equally slick on Canva, for example, with some really fancy templates, and building and planning your story out so that each little slate drives the story forward or tells you something different, just like you would do the flat plan of a magazine.
Okay, I think that's all we have for now.
Cool. Before we go, and if you have any other questions, 100% reach out on Twitter. Let me leave you with some resources. The first one is a good Twitter account to follow are these guys. They're the International Mobile Journalism Festival. They've been doing this for a while before mobile journalism was cool. And they are an incredible collection of people dedicated to storytelling on phones, not just for journalism, but fiction, all sorts of platforms. They run a yearly conference. It was going to be in Ireland this year. Obviously, Corona killed that. But they're doing live stuff that is really interesting that you can tune in, a ton of free stuff, particularly stuff for students. They also run a competition every year sponsored by the Thomson Foundation, where they give out money prizes for the best pieces of mobile journalism produced shot on phones. And there's a student category and like a professional journalism category. If you win as a student or if you're shortlisted, I think they take you to the conference if and when it happens again, on top of the money that you win. So a good one to keep an eye out, and it's a good place to make connections as well if you're interested in this kind of stuff. Another really good one, this is from the State. They're called the Mobile Motion Film Festival. A little bit more geared towards fiction storytelling, so like cinema, but an incredible resource on how to do mobile storytelling with cheap and cheerful creative solutions to stuff. And they have this entire thing. It was made in 2019, but a lot of it still stands. Their free film school is amazing. It has like 6 modules and lots of videos that you can watch, and they talk about everything from how to sound gather, the best tripods, the best apps, all sorts of different things. Cool little resource. This is the competition that I was telling you about, Mojo Competition, sponsored by the Thomson Foundation, so keep an eye out on that. Particularly if you're creating stuff for your courses, why not think about it like kill 2 birds with 1 stone, right? Submit an awesome kick-ass project and also submit it to a competition. This is the Amazon wish list that I was telling you guys about. So the link is underneath where it says Basic Mojo, or if you didn't know your phone does this, open up the camera and point it at the QR code and it'll take you straight to the Amazon wish list. This is my basic one. So it's a tripod, a microphone, an extender for the microphone, and a little case to carry it all together. And if anyone's interested in fancier stuff or you want to talk kit, please, please, please reach out. But this is what I would say really kits you out to start playing around with it and to do a little bit of exploring with mobile journalism. And my last piece of advice is the cool thing about phones is that it's democratizing where we tell stories, what kind of stories we tell, and where we send them. We need to stop thinking about television siloed from radio, siloed from print, and thinking about how we tell stories across screens. Everything coming up has screens on them. I don't know if you guys have seen, but there's these new like mental fridges that have screens on them. There's going to be touch screens everywhere. The future is beyond 2D. It's immersive and it's in screens around us, and how we figure out ways to tell stories like that. I know some friends who are experimenting, for example, telling stories on Apple Watches or on like wearable smart tech with like little snippets of audio and video that drive stories forward. Think beyond screens. How do we use our phones to news gather, to tell stories across all these different media? Because it's such an exciting time. And you guys are going to be way more native to this. It takes me about an hour and a half to make a TikTok video. It's going to take you 30 minutes. Future-proof your skills by trying all of these stuff out and practicing, so that when you're my age, a 15-year-old doesn't come to take your job, right? It's a practice thing, and it's just like getting yourself to do this over and over. One last favor to ask. Again, pull out the QR stuff thing on your phone. If you pointed at this, it's going to take you to a little feedback survey. We are trying really hard to collect feedback to show to potential funders that what we're doing at PressPad Remote is helping people out. And your feedback really helps us make that case. So it's going to take you maybe like 5 or 10 minutes to fill it out, but we would really appreciate it because we're trying to get funding to keep doing these kinds of events for free, regardless of coronavirus. So yeah, just point your phone at my QR code, keep it there. We'll send you a link as well anyway in the wrap-up email to this session, but we really, really, really would appreciate if you could do that. And if you're a Twitter person or a social media person, make some noise on social, help us tell other people that this exists, help us show through social impact that what we're doing is helping people out, whether it's on Twitter or on Instagram. You've got our hashtag, or you can tag me, or you can tag PressPad, you can tag Ayo because he's amazing, and Amber, who's been live tweeting this whole session as well. So thank you for listening to me ramble on and play with my toys. If anyone wants to chat, please, please, please reach out. I'm easy to find on Twitter, and I'm leaving you with my PressPad email on the screen. Thank you so much for being with us for this time. The session will be on YouTube and Facebook if you want to share it forward. And show me your films, show me your TikToks, show me your stuff. I'm excited to see what you guys come up with. I'll stop sharing my screen, and if anyone has any last questions, then please type them into the chat and we can answer them. But if not, I will close the session, and then we can all go and have some dinner, because I don't know about you guys, but I am starving.